They say governments run the world. Presidents, parliaments, and prime ministers, the faces we see on the screens. But behind the curtain, beyond elections and national borders, there's a power that never changes hands. It doesn't wear a crown, it doesn't wave a flag, yet it controls the rise and fall of every currency on earth. Every crisis, every stimulus, every debt ceiling, all orbit around this invisible empire. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the real global hierarchy, not nations, but networks. Not leaders, but liabilities. This is the story of the hidden empire controlling every central bank on earth. And the most chilling part, it's been hiding in plain sight for over a century. To understand this hidden empire, we have to go back to a time when money meant something. Once, every note and coin was backed by gold, real, physical, tangible. It was a system that kept governments honest and debt limited. You couldn't print gold out of thin air. But at the turn of the 20th century, that began to change. The industrial world was booming, wars were looming, and empires were hungry for financing. Gold was too slow, it couldn't keep up with ambition. So, powerful bankers and political elites met to discuss a new idea, a central bank that could control the flow of money, expand or contract it, without the limitations of gold. That idea became reality in December 1913, when US President Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act. But this wasn't just about America. This was the birth of a model, one that would soon spread across the world. The Federal Reserve was a strange creature, technically public, but privately owned by member banks. It could issue money, buy government bonds, and set interest rates. In short, it became the lender to the government itself. Money was no longer a store of value. It became a tool of control. World War I, the Great Depression, World War II. Each disaster deepened the world's dependence on centralized finance. During war, governments borrowed unimaginable sums and central banks printed whatever was needed. Inflation soared, currencies fell, but wars were won. And each time the dust settled, the same question appeared. Who exactly do nations owe all this debt to? The answer was always the same, not another country, not a royal family, but the same network of financial institutions operating behind the scenes. After World War II, in 1944, world leaders met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. There they designed a new global monetary system. The US dollar became the world's reserve currency, backed by gold. Other nations pegged their currencies to the dollar. But in that moment, something else was created. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Officially, they were meant to stabilize economies. But unofficially, they became the next evolution of the same empire, a global mechanism of debt, influence, and control. When developing nations borrowed money from these institutions, they often found themselves in a trap. Endless loans, strict conditions, and policies that benefited foreign interests more than their own people. Then came 1971. President Richard Nixon went on television and made a short announcement, one that changed the world forever. He ended the gold standard. From that day forward, the US dollar, and by extension, every other currency tied to it, was no longer backed by anything tangible. Money became purely symbolic. It was no longer something of value. It was a promise controlled by central banks, created with the click of a keyboard. That's when the empire became invisible, because money itself became faith. Central banks could now create endless liquidity. Governments could borrow infinitely. And ordinary people were told this was growth. Debt was no longer a burden, it became the product itself. As the decades passed, debt exploded. In 1970, global debt stood at around $1.5 trillion. By 2000, it had reached $62 trillion. Today, it's over $315 trillion, more than 330% of the world's GDP. Who do we owe this to? To the same system that creates the money we borrow, the central banking network. Each central bank may appear national. The Bank of England, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan. But their policies move in lockstep, guided by the same institutions. The Bank for International Settlements, the IMF, and the World Bank. The Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, is the least known and most powerful. Founded in 1930, It's based in Basel, Switzerland. It's immune to local laws, taxes, or oversight. It holds secret meetings among central bankers, meetings that decide global interest rates and monetary policy. No journalists, no transcripts, no accountability. Yet, when the BIS moves, the world's money moves. This is the true empire. A structure built not on armies or borders, but on obligation. Each crisis since then has only deepened the empire's power. The 2008 financial crash was a perfect example. Banks collapsed under their own greed. Millions lost their homes, their jobs, their savings. But who was bailed out? The same institutions that caused the collapse. Central banks slashed interest rates, created trillions in quantitative easing, and handed liquidity to the financial system. Stock markets recovered. The rich got richer. Ordinary citizens, they got austerity. And when the next crisis hit, the pandemic, the same cycle repeated. Money printing reached historic levels. Global debt surged by another $30 trillion in just 2 years. Governments promised stimulus. But where did that new money come from? The same central banking system, the same hidden empire, extending its influence through debt, again and again. Now, the next evolution is already underway. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are being tested and rolled out around the world. They're marketed as innovation, convenience, progress, but what they really represent is programmable money, a system where every transaction can be traced, limited, or reversed. Imagine a world where your money can expire, where spending can be restricted, where dissent can be punished financially. That's not a theory, that's the potential reality of centralized digital currency. And behind it, the same institutions, the IMF, BIS, and central banks, shaping the rules for the next century of financial control. Throughout history, every empire has ruled through force, until this one. This empire rules through debt, through policy, through trust, and the most effective form of control is the one that feels like freedom. Money is no longer a measure of value, it's a mechanism of obedience. Central banks aren't separate from government, they are the government's true creditor. Every economic crisis strengthens the same network, because each solution requires more debt, more dependence, and more control. If the hidden empire's greatest weapon is complexity, then our greatest defense is understanding. History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And right now, it's rhyming louder than ever. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Because once you see the strings, you can never unsee them. If you found this video enlightening, share it, spread it. The more people understand how money truly works, the less power this hidden empire holds. Subscribe to Economic Historian for more deep dives into the secrets they teach in schools, because understanding the past is the first step to reclaiming the future.